Hello Varlets. It's been a long time since my last video, almost 6 months or so, and I'll just chalk it up to life and other stuff taking priority over YouTube in general. But today I have for you my first impressions of the brand new Arbites class. And in this video, we're gonna go over the following. Number 1, is this class fun? How much enjoyment are you gonna get out of playing this class? Number 2, is this class good? What kind of potential can you reach with it? And number 3, is it worth your money? This video is going to be mostly my thoughts after playing a dozen games or so, and it won't go in depth into build crafting or anything. That will come at a later date when I have more time available on my hands. So, let's start with the first question. Is this class fun to play? My short answer would be yes. The Arbitrator kind of plays like a combination of Veteran, Zealot and Ogrin mashed into one, but what makes the Arbitrator unique is its command over an autonomous canine companion. There are 14 talent nodes specifically meant for your dog. And if you wanted to mess around with a playstyle that involved juicing up your Cybermastiff to the max to see it run around and cause havoc, you can absolutely do that. In fact, there's a keystone that's meant to give your Mastiff a huge damage buff to rip heretics apart with brutal efficiency. As far as behavior goes, your dog will generally stay by your side until commanded to attack a pinged enemy or there are enemies nearby for it to pounce on. The two K9 keystone nodes will decide how your dog plays throughout the mission. Unleashed Brutality commands your dog to prioritize specialists and elites. This node keeps your dog pretty close most of the time, since apart from gunners and snipers, bombers as well, elites and specialists tend to come to you instead. Go Get 'em is the other keystone that commands your dog to focus on killing ranged enemies. Your dog will run off into the backline and start mauling shooters and gunners, making it a great support node to engage and deal with those pesky shooters while you smash heads in the front line. I'm sure you're also curious to know how effective the remote detonation blitz is for the dog. In my limited experience, I find it the most useful as a tool to either create breathing room or to disrupt monsters. It's most effective when there are many enemies around your dog, which tends to happen when it's close to you instead of running around in the back line. The ability to stagger monsters is also helpful, since you can command your dog to save a teammate that's being eaten by a chaos spawn from far away. How useful this blitz is will depend on how effective you are at managing your dog's position and its cooldowns. Now, let's talk about the Arbitrator class itself. Aesthetically, I love it a lot. It definitely has a distinct presence compared to the other classes, and it feels much more intimidating and imposing, especially with its glowing red visors illuminating through the darkness. As far as abilities go, what is probably going to be the most used ability is undoubtedly the Nuncio Aquila. Deploying it into the battlefield creates an AoE where you and your allies become mega buffed, while your enemies deal less damage and even attack slower. If you pair the Nuncio Aquila with the Voltaic Shock Mines, you can be functionally protected from melee damage entirely, as everything coming towards you will be stunned, and anything that somehow manages to get into the circle will be attacking slower, dealing less damage to you, while you are constantly regenerating toughness and have even more damage resistance. The easiest games I had in my solo run was using this ability, and if it can keep the most potato bots alive, it will probably be the go-to ability for meta builds, just like the Veteran's Voice of Command. As for Castigator's stance, you get a huge 80% damage reduction buff, increased movement speed, and a 100% movement speed penalty reduction while performing actions at the cost of not being able to sprint. Here is the difference in movement speed between Castigator stance and sprinting normally. I'll admit that I haven't done very much with this ability yet, but the branch node it has, specifically Blessed Armament, does open up some interesting build combinations to explore. If anything, this ability is meant to create a sense of impending fear and doom in the enemy as you walk up to them unflinchingly. Even the sound effect that it plays when you activate the ability sounds terrifying. Finally, we have Break the Line, which is your charge. At base, you don't go very far with it, about 5 meters, but the knockback collision is another 4 meters in front of you, meaning you can knock enemies down from as far as 9 meters away. When you activate this ability, you will swap to your melee weapon and charge through all regular enemies, but will stop with a satisfying clang when you connect with an elite or specialist. Here's what it sounds like. In addition to knocking enemies back, you will also gain a damage and impact buff for 6 seconds, allowing you to continue punishing the enemies that you have downed. The Targeted Brutality node is what gives this ability one of the shortest cooldowns in the game. While already boasting a 20-second cooldown, you can potentially shave another 5 seconds off by rushing into a crowd. This basically turns you into a
bloody battering ram, that's what I am!
And if you want to live out your Foot Knight dreams like
Sir Crowbar!
this is 100% the ability you'll want to play around with. It's honestly one of the most satisfying abilities to use in the game, and I'm really happy that it's so spammable. Finally, let's talk about the keystones we have access to. In a nutshell, what we have is kind of a variation of the keystones of other classes. Execution Order is the keystone that powers up your dog, like I mentioned earlier, and it works like the Psyker's Disrupt Destiny that only highlights elites, specialists, and monsters. But it can highlight multiple of them at a time. Terminus Warren is like the Veteran's Weapon Specialist keystone, but works more on a charge-based system rather than a timer. Basically, if you attack enemies around you with your melee weapon, you'll build up charges that buff up your ranged weapon, and vice versa. The key difference here is that you aren't pressured into switching back and forth between weapons, unlike weapon specialists. You can decide when you'd like to access the buffs you've accumulated, as long as you have the charges for it. This keystone has also some interesting branch nodes. I am particularly interested in Terminal Decree, where you can act as a healer for your team in a way. #Paladin Dreams. Lastly, we have the Forceful Keystone. This one is a variation of the Ogrin's Feel No Pain, and it's all about damage mitigation and crowd control in the thick of combat. I haven't used this particular keystone all that much, but there's some build combinations I'm interested in looking at. Talents aside, what sets the Arbitrator apart from the rest of the classes is its range of unique weapons. The Arbitrator comes with 4 unique weapons, 2 melee and 2 ranged. The first melee weapon is the Arbites Shock Ball, which is basically a lightning club. It's a pretty balanced weapon that can deal with a range of enemy combinations, while sporting a weapon special that allows you to stun enemies if they have been electrocuted with your normal attacks. The second is the Shock Maul and Suppression Shield, and it's one of my favorite weapons from the set because of its unique special, which is essentially a frontal flashbang that disorientates and suppresses enemies momentarily. I love the utility it brings to the table alongside opening different avenues of play and options. Combat-wise, I feel that it's a weapon more suited for single targets, but can manage small groups fine. This weapon comes in 2 different marks which sport different attack patterns. For ranged weapons, the iconic weapon that we see in the trailer is the Exterminator Shotgun. First, listen to its boom. Satisfying and packs a punch to match. Now, unlike the regular shotguns that we already have, where its special ammo is part of its total ammo pool, the Exterminator Shotgun's special rounds are a separate resource that are represented by the shells on the top of the gun. This means you only ever get 6 special rounds to work with until you come across an ammo pickup to reload them all. This shotgun comes with 2 different marks. The first is a Mark III, which has a duckbill spread on its regular shot. This variant works great at thinning down packed groups and does alright at taking down single targets. Its special shells fire electrocution rounds that stun enemies. The other variant, the Mark VIII, which is identified by its snout, has less ammo in the chamber and does slightly less damage, but it has a much tighter spread and is more suited for single target sniping. The special rounds from this mark applies stacks of brittleness on enemies, stripping away some of their armor resistance. Finally, we have the Subductor Short Pistol and Riot Shield. Don't be mistaken, this pistol here is a revolver with shotgun shells, and it's as devastating as it sounds. This pistol has 5 rounds in the chamber and also comes with a speed loader for added quality of life. You can't ADS with this weapon, and trying to do so will bring up your shield instead, giving you some cover against ranged and melee attacks. If you happen to run out of bullets while your shield is up, you'll completely cover yourself until you can reload. The special attack is a simple shield bash that can stagger enemies around. Not the most impactful of things, but it does look cool. In case you are curious, here are the rest of the weapons the Arbites have access to. A good selection, but not too large of an arsenal. So, given everything we know about the Arbites up until this point, is this class good? From my limited set of games, I felt there was always something I could do because of my dog. Even when I'm faced in a situation where I absolutely cannot stop the reload, but must deal with priority targets like snipers, trappers, and bombers, my dog provided me with the ability to do so at all times. And this is where I feel the difference between a good arbitrator and a great one is going to be. How proactive they are with maximizing the additional support their dog can bring to the table, rather than just letting it roam around and maul whatever it wants. The arbitrator has access to a lot of strong and easy to use offensive and defensive buffs. If you aren't playing overly reckless and aggressive, it's actually very hard to go down. Hell, you can even tank an overhead attack from a crusher and still fight back. On the other hand, a good arbitrator can turn an overwhelming disadvantage around with the amount of damage resistance and crowd control available to the class. In my solo games, where the bots were functionally useless and you essentially had to keep picking them up, which is not unlike some of my actual games I play, it wasn't very difficult to hold my own between my dog and myself. Of course, this wasn't me soloing Havoc40 or anything like that. I'm not nearly good enough to do that. But in high shock damnation games and the like, it was relatively okay. So, if you aren't that great at the game, playing as an arbitrator will still be fun because of how powerful and how forgiving it is to play, which is ironic given the class in question. But if you are a skilled player and want another way to test your skills through combat, or like me, want to find different ways to craft and play a class, then you have plenty of avenues to express your desired playstyle here. Right now, I have at least 6 different builds that I like to experiment with once the Arbites goes live, and I have all my mods for testing. With the sheer amount of power you have at your disposal between weapons, talents, and on top of your dog, you'll be a force to be reckoned with as you dispense the will of the Lex. One last thing to cover for the class. It's fashion. Something I want to point out is the cosmetics that you'll find in the shop when the class drops. This particular set, which shows up in just the coat and pants, actually comes with a helmet which looks like Soldier 76 visor. Now, I don't know about you, but I think that looks really cool, and I'm going to be getting it just because I want to cosplay as Soldier 76. Maybe even theme a build around it. Speaking of cosplay, this helmet here lets you cosplay as a Mauler if you want to do that. Get the Crusher, and slap on the Dulex armor, and you basically look like a BDSM version of the Karnak twins. Finally, let's talk about the cosmetics for the Cyber Mastiff. Honestly, the cosmetics are kind of disturbingly good because of how it basically cycles through your dog being less of a dog and becoming more and more cybernetic, even going so far as to lose part of its skull, and in the case of the deluxe armor, its entire head has been replaced by cybernetics. This skin, however, is my favorite because of its glowing eyes and just how intimidating it looks while still looking like a good boy rather than a mechanical dinosaur. So, given how fun I think the class is and how good it plays, is it worth your money to get this class? I would of course say yes. Beyond what I've just talked about, the quality and care that has gone into bringing this class to life is definitely worth the money. If I had to give this DLC a number or a score to help you encapsulate what I feel about it after playing around for some time, I'd give it an easy 8 out of 10, mainly because of the build crafting potential I can explore with it, and the fact that we have a companion to play with, which is something that tinkles my inner summoner class enjoyer. With that, we've reached the end of my first impressions video. If you want to see the Arbites in action in higher level gameplay, then I really recommend checking out other content creators and their Havoc40 games or the like. There's only so much you'll see from me as I shake off months of rust coming back into Darktide. I'm afraid being short on time and having to play solo while in the middle of an extremely busy work period isn't very conducive to running more difficult or engaging content. But oh well, I'll work with what I've got. If after watching this video, you're interested in getting the Arbites DLC, then might I suggest you check out the link in the description below. Clicking on that will take you to the Steam page for the DLC, which you can then wishlist for when it comes out. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Varlets.